I begin by acknowledging also the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. And on behalf of my party, I recommit to the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full, including a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament. When we want to think of a leader who stood tall when we most needed it, our eyes turn to a great Western Australian Prime Minister. John Curtin faced circumstances that might have overwhelmed a lesser person. Yet even as the war drew closer, Curtin was able to think ahead to a better future. Curtin summed up his Labor government's policy with the phrase, "Victory in war, victory for the peace." He saw a victory for the peace not just as the war's end, but as another challenge our nation could rise to and create a new era of prosperity. Thanks to Curtin and to Labor, that peacetime victory was resounding. Today, having just experienced a global calamity of a very different nature, we again stand at a crucial point in our history. As we begin to emerge from the COVID pandemic, we reflect on what we've been through and who rose to meet the challenge. We can look to another Western Australian leader who stood up for the safety and security of his people. I can tell you that one of the most straightforward choices I've ever had to make was when I had to pick between Premier Mark McGowan and Clive Palmer. What we saw from Premier McGowan was true character and true leadership, a responsible government that balanced social good and economic need, a clear demonstration of how investing in the health, safety and well-being of people underwrites a robust and growing economy. Those same twin goals, social good and economic growth, underpin my approach to building a better future. The challenge is considerable, but I believe with a better government in Canberra, we can have a better future. And it all begins with our economy. Our economy is crying out for leadership and reform, but getting neither. Australia needs a plan to create an economy where we have high wage jobs and we have economic growth without increasing inflation. We need to help families with rising costs and make sure their incomes are going up. That's exactly what Labor will do, because our economic plans focus on increasing productivity. And we know it's possible because Labor governments have delivered on it before, pursuing an agenda for growth with increased productivity at its heart. Labor's reforms, starting with Hawke and Keating, led to 30 years of uninterrupted economic growth. Right now, Australia once again needs a reform agenda and a forward-looking economic vision so we can shape the future. When I gave the first of my vision statements as Labor leader back in October 2019, it was on jobs and the future of work, and I delivered it right here in Perth. COVID wasn't even on the horizon, yet we knew that for all the government's upbeat pronouncements, the economic reality begged to differ. Before the pandemic, debt had already been doubled. Productivity was going backwards in consecutive quarters. Wages were stagnant. There was no hint of an appetite for starting the reforms that were so clearly needed. Since the Coalition came to office, business investment has dropped 20%. In terms of manufacturing output, Australia now ranks last in the OECD. In the Harvard Index of Global Economic Complexity, Australia ranks 86, sandwiched between Paraguay and Uzbekistan. Now, all of this before the recent news of the highest inflation rates in 2 decades and an interest rate hike that sent jitters through Australia. All of this before the Morrison government made clear that they would rather see Australia's lowest paid workers go backwards with a real wage cut than see their pay increase by just $1 an hour. All of this adds up to an economy where it is simply too hard for too many Australians to get ahead. If Labor is elected, this is the economy we will inherit, along with $1 trillion of debt and just not enough to show for it.